We've seen C++ function examples like this before, where we're defining the area of a circle based upon a parameter called the radius. And this works out really well if I'm passing a value into my function. Let's give a quick example of something like that. This is an example that we've seen where we've run this, calling our function passing a parameter. However, C++ allows us an interesting option. That is, it allows us to define a default value for our parameter. So instead of having to always define a parameter, I could set a default value in case no parameter is provided. To make it so we have a default variable, I go into our function prototype and specify a value for radius. Now I can make a function call without passing a parameter. If I run this application, you notice I have a value for when I pass in a value. You notice it calculates an area based upon when I pass in a value, and it calculates a different area when I don't pass a value because my default value is different. It provides it when our radius is 20 instead of some other value. Additionally, I can do this if I have multiple parameters. I define each parameter with its own separate value. I don't have to define a variable for all of my parameters. I can do it for as few as none to as many as all of them. Now I'm going to write my function like I would before. And now I use my cout function. I've now called the function volume of blocks 4 different times. 1 passing no parameters, 1 passing a single, passing 2 parameters, and passing all 3 parameters. When the application is run, you can see that the volume is generated based upon the arguments that are passed to my function or not passed to my function. So by using a default parameter, it allows me to essentially have more than one function built into it. In many ways, this is similar to overriding a function where I could call and add extra function parameters if necessary. But this makes it a little bit more simple when I'm going to work with something that might very often have a default or standard value. There is a couple rules with this. Once I start using a default value, I have to continue using a default value. So I cannot use a default value for my first parameter and then define my second and third parameters. It will generate an error. If I come into this example here and remove my first parameter, you notice that it underlines it and shows an error. This would be true whether it's my first or second parameter that gets removed. Once I start using a default parameter, I must continue to use a default parameter. This is pretty standard in most programming languages, although not all of them are like this. And that is how you use your default parameter values inside of C++.